Hello and welcome to another episode of Movies That Make Us. I'm Jake.
I'm Tracy.
And I'm Val.
we are finally doing an episode together.
Yay!
It's been a while.
It's a crazy season. I can't
It's
believe
a crazy time of year. Yeah.
It's been 3 days. Like I was like, what?
You
I
had
haven't wrapped anything.
You had like 3 cheer conferences though, didn't you?
I had 2. I had Steel City Comic-Con in the middle, so I got a break. But I got freaking food poisoning at Steel City, so I'm still like pretty tired from it, but I have my Gatorades.
There you go.
Yeah.
Oh, that's no fun.
And no, I would rather have a sore throat any day.
Would you rather see Aquaman 2
I knew
again?
that was coming.
That's hard
That's a hard one.
I think I'd rather have the stomach flu just because people expect you to vomit when you have like the stomach flu or food poisoning. But like if I vomit while I'm watching Aquaman 2, I don't think people would understand.
Wow.
Yeah. Or appreciate it. I mean,
I was able to find one good thing about the movie, like I always do. I try to find one good thing. I also try to understand why fans would like this film. I will not understand after this weekend when you have hardcore DC fans come out and if they say this movie is amazing, I don't know. I mean, I don't know what I'm going to do about it, but lies.
I don't think anybody's going to ask for the.
There's going to be at least 1 to 2 people.
Sure, but there's not going to be like
our circle of the Facebook.
There's going to be a big movement for Rebel Moon's the greatest thing ever made.
I actually do understand that one.
Okay.
I do not hate Rebel Moon.
Okay.
But I have lots of opinions. I have so many opinions, and if you want to see and hear my very passionate opinions about these 2 movies, I was on an episode of visually stunning podcast with our friend Mark, and it's up on his website now. I will share a link on my Facebook page, but yeah, I usually don't get super heated. There was a lot of heat. There was some poop talk. Ooh. I did not swear one time.
Okay.
But there were some fingers.
Well, you know, I kind of feel like I loved what Zack Snyder did with Superman and the rest of the DC universe, so I can't wait to see what he does with Star Wars.
Chef's kiss. Yeah.
This is the thing, is it's Star Wars, Dune, Firefly, Gladiator, Mad Max, Viking, whatever. Like it's 10 different movies in one movie. It's basically Zack Snyder giving his finger to every single filmmaker that made those films, saying, I can do it better and let me piecemeal it together. If he would have chosen 2, I know I can't ever choose 1, 2 to 3 of those ideas and was able to edit himself and not be so pompous about what he can do, it would have worked.
Was more than half the movie in slow-mo? What's the over-under on that?
There were some Matrix moments.
I heard there's so much slow-mo in this.
There was 2 scenes that really didn't need it, but there were some scenes where it worked.
Lot of like swirling capes with slow-mo and...
I mean, I don't remember it. There weren't too many for me, but my overall opinion is that it was the most beautiful, unoriginal movie that I've ever seen. Because what Snyder does do well is being behind the camera, being a cinematographer. He was writer, director, cinematographer of this film.
Nobody else wants to work with
like
him.
Director of photography. But what he did that I give him applause for, that other filmmakers should have done this year, because it was the year of really bad CGI, right?
Yes.
But what he did, because he knew he didn't have the budget for amazing CGI, is he did this like smoke and mirror magic with lights and camera angle. Like technically as a film school nerd, I was like, that is cool. I see what you did there. He's making me feel this way. The first 10 minutes of the film, I was like, oh, I am getting my space Western that is going to be like a little more radar. Because as much as I like Serenity, I wanted it to be a little more, right? And
Well,
watching it, and I'm like, oh, we're going to get this. And then I was like, oh, wait a second. That's
there,
Gladiator. Wait, that's the Matrix. Wait, that's Pirates of the Caribbean. Wait, that whole scene is from Star Wars Rebels. Like it was, but it had so much potential, so it made me so angry because it was beautiful. It was technical amazement. The casting was great. They actually were good. Like the whole cast was great. He had everything he could get to have a good movie, but he got in his own way. And there's going to be a 3-hour version of it that's a totally complete different side of the movie. Netflix wanted a PG-13, so we gave them a 2-hour, 15 minutes. Then on Netflix, there's going to be a 3-hour version, which has nothing to do with this version.
Yeah.
Come on, Zack Snyder.
And this is only half. He's got a sequel coming.
Yeah.
The second half is coming.
It's exhausting.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's weird though to hear you say that he got in his own way, because that's just so not like him.
He has 3 really good movies behind his belt. As much as Watchmen is in there. Is it Sucker Punch?
Sucker Punch was okay.
Well, I liked the idea that he took a chance with that, and he actually had a full idea. And I like Man of Steel, so like I didn't hate Man of Steel.
I didn't hate that one, but I had major problems with it. But I hated Batman v Superman.
Well, yeah, that was.
So I think on those movies, though, I think with Man of Steel especially, like he wasn't just given free reign. Like he could do a lot, but he wasn't. And I think they kind of gave him the keys to the kingdom after that, and he was. It's similar to and I'm not trying. You guys know how much I love making Star Wars fans mad, but it's similar to George Lucas with the Star Wars prequels, where he wanted all, and with the special edition of Star Wars, where he was believing his own hype and adding in, and nobody was there to say, George, this is too much. Let's pull it back.
Yeah.
And you need a friend like that if you're going to be making movies or any art. Someone to say, well, no, man, you've gone too far.
Yeah. And Rebel Moon, it was pitched to Star Wars and to Lucas, and they turned it down. And so then he brought it back, he rewrote it and made it even more Star Wars, and again basically gave the finger. And there are some moments in it where there's some Lucas-esque dialogue, but it's not enough that it bothered me. There were, again, I don't hate it. There was a lot of things about it that I loved. And the main actress was amazing. And I love the droid, because you know how much I love droids.
You are a droid fan.
But again, I'm looking at the droid and I'm like, I've seen this droid before. It's 2 different Star Wars droids in one droid. And it's exactly like Rogue One, like with the droid being recycled that used to be a war droid and now is not. There's also a little bit of like the Sword and the Stone, like knights. Like there's a bunch of things. There's some Game of Thrones elements in there.
Space dragons.
No, there's none of that. It's more of like the king and the darkness of it. There's some moments where it's a Minority Report. There's a little bit Minority Report. There's a little bit, of course, The Matrix. I kind of call it the Wish of Snyder. So if you go see Wish from Disney, it was their 100-year celebration. So they picked all of their movies over the decades and they put it in this movie and they made it different. But if you know what the movies are, the whole movie, you're like, oh, that's cool. Oh, I get it. Da, da, da. This is that, but none of the work was his. he, instead of being inspired by other people's work, which I'm totally for, is being
Right.
inspired. But this is just like, I'm going to take that scene and that scene and that
Yeah.
character and
And
this.
I think it's hard, you know, I think you're right. Being inspired, it's so common because it's hard not to, when you're making a film or making a book or whatever, not take from the stories that you know and love and try to put your own spin on it, own interpretation. Like that's common. You're inspired, you're influenced, whatever you want to call it. That's very different from just stealing a scene or
Yeah.
stealing a concept
Yeah.
and changing the name or something so that it's now
Yeah.
yours.
So this one, I can see why Snyder fans and action film fans will, I will get it. Because again, there are so many great things about it, but he is just, it is just pompous. Like, to me, it is,
That's Zack Snyder. So
you know, and if that's why you like him, you are gonna love the crap out of it. You're just gonna eat it up with a little spoon. And but don't go see Aquaman. I mean, some people are still gonna go see Aquaman. That's fine, but
All
I
right.
warned you. I warned you
It'll be
about
fine.
it. But what's really cool is, instead of those two crap movies, there's a lot of really great movies opening up this weekend, and we're going to talk about one of them, but two of them are sports films. So The Iron Claw, which we're talking about, and then Boys in the Boat, which opens on Christmas Day, both sports movies. One of them formulaic, which I'm totally okay with a sports movie.
Right.
Both of them are based on a true story,
Right.
and they're both really cool to watch, but The Iron Claw is the better pick for me.
Interesting.
excellent.
Yeah, I'm interested in Boys in the Boat. I don't follow rowing at all, so this is going to be one of those movies.
Well,
that
I
I'm
don't
like,
follow
I love this
wrestling.
sports movie, and I don't know the sport at all. Like, you know, Greatest Game Ever Played is another one. I don't follow golf, but that movie's great.
Yeah.
If all
Well,
of golf that I watched on TV, it was like that movie.
Yeah, the cool thing about George Clooney, before we get into The Iron Claw, is that George Clooney is a very specific director. He makes movies to just make a very straightforward, good movie. He doesn't pick movies that have tricky storylines, that are big action movies. He picks a movie that he knows is just going to be a very well-made movie. This is that sports movie. It is based on a true story, but it starts out with the underdog that has to work really hard to get where they want to go. People aren't sure if they're going to get there. Then they get there, then they win. But I am a huge sports movie fan, and I'm okay with that. That's why I like it, because I know at the end I'm going to feel good. Whereas The Iron Claw is nothing. It is not formulaic. I know nothing about, I know like some of the higher like points that are in pop culture about the pro wrestling world. But other than that, I didn't know about this family. I don't really know the ins and outs of what the wrestling world is. And you don't need to be pulled in by this film.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was interesting. I'm a little bit more familiar with the story, I think, than because we all saw it together.
Yeah, I feel like we're all at different. We're all, like,
Yeah.
I knew nothing. Tracy knew a little bit. Jake knows like all of it.
Right.
And I think it's really hard with something like wrestling, because you're trying to please two different audiences. In this case, you're trying to please a mainstream audience that is not familiar with a lot of the wrestling terms, the history,
especially the 70s wrestling.
Yeah, and you're not as familiar with the territories and all of, like, mainstream audience isn't going to be familiar with all of that. So you've got to make it inviting enough that they will come in and enjoy it, but you don't want to reject the fans. You don't want to make it, I don't know, watered down too much or dumbed down too much, that fans who do know that are going to be turned off by it. And that's a fine line to walk that I feel like they do a really good job in this film.
Yeah, A24 is the movie house, and I have to say I've been so impressed by A24 this year and the gambit of different films that they put out, and they were so smart with this film, because it could go in a way that it's totally hokey. Because when you tell me we're going to go learn about WWE or we're going to watch a movie about wrestling, I'm like, okay, like, It could have gone in a really hokey way, and the only thing hokey about this movie is somebody's cousin that ended up playing who was the bigger wrestler that everybody knows?
Ultimate Warrior.
No, in the film.
Well, they mentioned
Ric Flair. Like that was the only hokey thing about the movie, but it actually was kind of great that it was, because for me, as somebody that doesn't, like it kind of took me out of the film, but at the same time, I'm like, I feel like Ric Flair is kind of like that. But I also think that somebody like literally promised someone that their nephew or like cousin could be in the film. And that's who they cast as Ric Flair.
The promo that he gives is like word for word a promo that Ric Flair did.
Oh, wow.
It's very much what he said and what he did, but Ric Flair is so distinct and his gimmick is so him that whoever this actor is, and what's funny is I looked up the actor and he's like known for his impression work, like doing impressions and things like that. And he missed the mark on this. Like it did not feel like Ric Flair to me.
It stuck out like a sore thumb.
It did.
And it's hard because I think Ric Flair's a hard person to impersonate because he's so unique and so him. But
I've seen some decent Ric Flair impersonations, and this is not one.
He even messed up the woo. Like that was
the reason why I liked it, and maybe like I'm reaching, but the reason why I liked it is because through the duration of this film, it's very serious, and the family and the dad and the brothers are also serious about getting this title and how their family is being overlooked. And there's all of these people that are going around and above them because, they're jokers, they're clowns. They've got like this personality. And for them then to go to this person that people put on a pedestal as one of the best wrestlers, and then they go to him and he's the biggest joke throughout the whole movie, to me, like made sense. But I don't think that's what they were going for. But for me, it hit because I was like, sometimes when you are trying to work so hard at a goal and people put them up here and then you meet those people in real life and they're nothing like you think they would be. Yeah. Like that's kind of how I felt about it, but I don't think that's how they meant it.
Yeah. No, I mean, Ric Flair was way flamboyant, way over the top, but he was so well known and so respected in a lot of and
but underneath, was he that cool of a person, or at home was he like this?
No, probably not.
Yeah.
I mean, I would imagine usually with the gimmicks, the really good gimmicks, they take kind of their personality and turn it up to 11.
Right.
And that I think is who Ric Flair is.
And that's The Rock.
Like Jason Momoa and Aquaman.
Jason Momoa. I loved his Fast and the Furious.
That's one of the best. Yeah.
That was fantastic. Yeah.
Not Aquaman.
We lost Jake.
Sorry, I accidentally swiped my my touch.
I didn't even say anything.
Bye, Jake. Can we get into the cast of this film?
Yeah, because the cast is really, really strong. And not just Zac Efron, who was like, I think he was using this movie to audition to play the Hulk because
that's exactly
massive.
What I was thinking.
I put it in my review that he looks like a young Lou Ferrigno mixed with a little bit of Arnold Schwarzenegger. Like it was there. For somebody to go in and say that I need to break away from what people expect of me and I need to melt into this character, he couldn't just get some muscles. Like he needed to go all the way, and he transformed himself. I did not see Zac Efron the entire movie. I saw him as his character.
Yeah. Yeah, he was really, really good in this movie. I think this is one of his better performances.
I think it's his best performance. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
But Jake, the guy in real life wasn't that bulked, was he?
No. I was looking at photos.
Yeah, in his prime he was bulkier. Like now he's not. Obviously, he's much older. But I don't think he was ever that
But he was just like,
they made him look pretty good.
Where he was like this, like, oh my gosh.
Yeah, the one that was more like that, I feel like, was Carrie in real life. But
yeah, I was looking at the pictures of Carrie. Even Michael was bigger in real life than he was. Yeah.
Yeah. So Michael in this is an interesting character, because I feel like, so this follows the 4 Von Erich brothers. We've got David, Kevin, Carrie, and Michael. And if you don't know the story of the Von Erichs, I'm not going to spoil it here, because while it is a well-known story in wrestling circles, I don't think it is mainstream, and so you will experience it through the movie. But they all got into the family business, which was professional wrestling. But in real life, there was actually another Von Erich brother, and he was smaller. He was like, he had some disease that made his bones really brittle. Like, he just wasn't really cut out for wrestling, and he ended up getting into the business as well.
And when your dad was a major wrestler and all your brothers are major wrestlers, and that family was so toxic masculinity in terms of this is how you show your manhood. I can't imagine what that brother must have been going through growing up in that family.
I feel like they took parts of Michael, the youngest that's in the movie, and this other brother, and kind of put it together. So, but yeah, Michael, I mean, he looked like a wrestler at the time, and he was much more muscly than they showed him in the movie.
Yeah.
Kevin by far was the most muscly in the movie. Like, Zac Efron by far was the biggest. And it's interesting because I think Kevin was one that consulted a lot on the movie more. I mean,
well, and I think it made the point of, like, you see him as out of all the brothers, like, he was the most focused. He basically he didn't have a life. He had his family, and then he had working out to wrestling, and to show that he was the most dedicated to it, and then to show that his father kind of dismissed it was, I think it, like, if he wouldn't have been that muscly, you'd be like, well, why is his dad like passing him up? Right. So to me, because I don't know that much of the backstory, it made me, as just a civilian watching it, like, I didn't understand why he keeps passing him by. And what was heartbreaking, again, without giving too much away, is that these brothers were tight. They spent so much time together. They supported each other. They cheered each other on. And when they knew that, like, they all knew that Michael should not have been in the ring and that his heart was somewhere else. But because they all wanted to impress their dad so much and really, like, give him what he's always wanted, because he was trying to live his dream through every single one of his sons. And I don't think any of them wanted to say no. And even though they all knew that Michael shouldn't be there, like, they didn't know how to express that, and to see the heartbreak go through this family, like, that is, like, still, that stayed with me.
Well, even when the brothers are going to the older brother, is Kevin, right? The older brother.
Yeah.
And they're like, you've got to talk to mom, because, like, none of the boys wanted to even talk to the dad about it.
Yeah.
Like, you got to go through mom to get to dad. And mom was like,
mom shut that down fast.
So I want to go through really quick, though, so we can talk about these characters and people understand the people behind them, because it's so powerful. So we've already talked about Zac Efron. Jeremy Allen White plays Carrie, and if you don't know who he is, he's in The Bear, and he's in a bunch of other movies, but I think The Bear is what people know him for, and just a phenomenal actor. And then you have Harris Dickinson, who has always played the pretty boy, right? And in this movie, I think he was also kind of unrecognizable, and this is very different from the roles that he plays. And then Mara Tierney, who just blew me away. And then the dad,
he almost stole the show.
He was really good.
Yeah, Holt, is it McCallany? Is that how you say it?
I think so.
And then Stanley Simmons, who plays Mike. It was just, every time one of them was on screen, they all had the same amount of power. I don't think there was like a power struggle of who stood out more. Even you know, when their mom came on, is it Mara Tierney? She had one of the most quiet parts, but her body language and the looks in her face, they were not missed on audiences. Like, I felt what she was feeling.
Well, and the other female performance that was so strong is Lily James.
Yeah.
She was really, really good.
She's really impressed me this year. Like, I was like, it's interesting because she was Cinderella in the Kenneth Branagh Cinderella film. And I like that she's branched out and done so many different things this year. I mean, like, she was Pamela Anderson in the Pam and Tommy series on Hulu and was outstanding. I thought she was fantastic. And she was really good here. She brings a real quiet dignity to this role.
She does. Harris Dickinson was probably the one to me that I was the most surprised, aside from the dad, but like him as David, he put in such a solid performance. I mean, his character was so captivating, and I think that is because of the performance, the actor, and the way he delivered it. So
that dad, though, oh my gosh, like I think, and of course, because Zac Efron is the main actor, he's the main star, he gets the most time and stuff, but like right behind him was that dad. Like, you don't often see a dad that is that domineering and that overbearing. Like, it just, like, you felt it. Like, when he's grabbing his son and he's like got him in that head claw,
iron claw,
in the iron claw, and he's like, do you feel that? That's pressure. Like, what you're complaining about, that's nothing. This is what you need to worry about. And it was like you're sitting there in your seat going, ow, ow.
Yeah. And what I love about the father, because he is very domineering, he is you mentioned, Val, the toxic masculinity that runs throughout.
That was Tracy.
The film. Oh, was it Tracy that said it? Sorry, Tracy, you said toxic masculinity that runs throughout the film. But what was interesting was, like many family relationships, it was very complex, right? Like, you think the dad's the bad guy, and in a lot of ways he felt very antagonistic, but they still loved him and respected him, and they were still a family, and it was still like, they're still going to come home at Christmas, they're still going to be together as a family, even though there was that strained relationship. And even between the mother and the father, there was a
and I was talking to Babe about this, like, after the film, and like, you have to put into consideration the time that this happened. Okay. It was in the early or the mid 1970s that, you know, he really started, you know, his kids became of age that he could start training them. And I want to say that the dad grew up in a time where you didn't really show a lot of affection to your sons. And he wanted to teach them the family business. He wanted to make sure that they knew how to take care of themselves. They all worked on that farm. They all hung out together. They were a tight-knit family. And they all really wanted to be there. He wasn't making any of these kids be around. And so for me to say that he's the bad guy, he was doing what he thought he needed to do to keep to raise his sons in the best way. But I do think that if his wife knew how to speak up a little, that maybe some things would change. But again, she's in a time period with a man that she married in a small rural place in that time period, and it just didn't happen very often where she supported him to almost the end, right?
Well, and Jake, we were talking after the movie, and you were saying, I mean, this was a time period where you didn't have multi-million-dollar contracts. I mean, these guys were making hardly any money, and they were paying for their own gas money, you were saying.
Oh, yeah. And at this time, you know, professional wrestling, when you think about it now, it's the WWE, or what was formerly the WWF. And you think about, like, the 90s, and there was WCW, which is what this promotion, World Class Championship Wrestling, eventually became WCW.
Oh, okay.
But at this time, it's still the territories. And with the territories, you were signed on to do a show, you got a cut of the door, depending on how you performed, things like that. And it was very much like, you paid your own way. You got there on your own. and you didn't get flown there, you didn't get transport. It was all on you, and you'd come and you'd be performing sometimes in a big stadium, sometimes in a high school gym, and there's a lot of that still happens on the indie scene today.
Yeah, I was
For
watching
wrestlers that are
the
trying to break into
wrestlers.
the business, you know.
Yeah, I was watching the wrestlers on Netflix, and they at one point they're performing in a city park, and there's like 10 people. Yeah.
Well, we've gone to Fan X, and there's a local wrestling promotion here. I think it's Devotion Championship Wrestling or something like that. And they're performing just in the middle of the vendor floor at Fan X. And you've got a, circle of people kind of standing around watching. But like, yeah, that's paying your dues, right? And in the territory days, there wasn't a big promotion like WWE that was national. And so you kind of, if you were in Texas, you were part of World Class Championship Wrestling, and you were at the top of the game there in Texas. And then if you were, in Missouri, then there was a different promotion, and there were just all these different territories. The big one up in Canada was Stampede Wrestling, that was owned by Stu Hart. And his sons all got into wrestling as well. That's Bret Hart, Owen Hart.
I love that family. Yeah. Grew up on a lot of that. Yeah.
So it was very common. And because of this territory kind of system, you had a lot of families that were in the business. Like the Von Erichs were one wrestling family, but like the Harts were another one, came up at the same time, where because everything was so protected in kayfabe, which is the term for the not real, but you're supposed to believe it's real storylines that happen in wrestling.
It's like method acting.
Characters.
Never break things.
And you had to protect all of this. Like there's a scene where Lily James is sitting with him, and they're eating dinner, Zac Efron and her, and she says something about like, well, isn't it all fake? Like they at that time, they wouldn't admit that it was. And it's not fake. That's not the right term. It's
right.
Scripted. It's a performance, but it's not fake.
You still have to be in a certain condition, and you have to practice so you don't get hurt. Like it is.
Yeah. And so, but at that time, you would never, like, you were pushing that it was real, trying to make it believable.
When we're in the screening, and when she asked him that question, I kind of saw Jake kind of go, like, tense up, like, oh, here it comes.
Like, if you want a list of top 10 things to like never say to a professional wrestling, that's probably number one.
Yeah.
By a long shot. Like, just don't say it's fake, because it's very athletic. It takes a lot of work, a lot of effort. Fake's just not the right word for it.
And one thing, they kind of touch on this a little bit in the movie, and I wish they would have gone a little bit deeper with it, is when the brother, he becomes addicted to the drugs, and they show him like crushing up a pain pill. Because at the time, I mean, you had to self-medicate, because if you went to the doctor and got put into a cast, or you got whatever, you were
done.
You were done.
Yeah.
And so these guys just did whatever they had to get through the pain, to get to the next.
Well, and I also don't think that we were that far in medicine and physical therapy and other things that you could do for an athlete. There wasn't that stuff to do. And also, like you said, if somebody said they were hurt and they needed to go see a doctor, like, they're a wuss. They can't handle it. They're not strong enough to be there, So again, it was this totally different world that we don't live in anymore.
Well, you see that at the beginning when he's in, toward the beginning when he's in a match and he gets slammed down hard on the cement, and he couldn't move. Like, it wasn't just that he was hurt. Like, he literally had to like drag himself up and into the ring. And his dad gives him a hard time after that, saying, that's what it's like. You got to be tougher than that. They're going to hit hard. Because if you got up to that point, because I think that was against Harvey Race. Like, wasn't that his first championship match? You get to that point, that's your shot. You can't blow your shot. If you get hurt, then they're not going to wait for you to get better and then put you back in that top spot. They just move on to the next person.
Because there's 13 other guys behind you that are all chomping at the bit that'll do that.
One of my favorite scenes in the movie is when Kevin, Zac Efron's character, kind of goes ballistic on the big wrestler I can't remember names.
Was it Bruiser Brody?
I don't remember. But he like literally won't stop on him.
It was Ric Flair. It was in
Ric
the match.
Flair.
Ric Flair
and everybody thinks he was too crazy. His family's like, what the crap were you doing? And then Ric Flair walks in. He's like, yeah, man, I thought you were soft. I thought you weren't going to be anything. That was awesome. And he's got blood like coming down from his face. And he was like, let's go get drinks. Like, this is cool, you know? And so what we would think, our reaction was, oh my gosh, like he's out of control. That's crazy. That's what they wanted. They wanted that big performance. The other wrestlers like wanted to, even if you beat them and you went off script, they wanted it to be a big deal. Right. And the one thing that Kevin didn't have, that David had, was that the personality of being in the ring. Kevin had the strength and the heart, and he would get up and get up. Whereas David, like, he was so great on a microphone. He had that personality. And so that's kind of why he went in that direction. And so it's different to see what each of the brothers had that made them good and different from the other brothers, because then, you know, you get down to Kerry, and Kerry was just like killer instincts. Like, he just got in there and he was kind of, he turned into a machine because he's an Olympic athlete. He knows that you just go, go, go. And so you could see something change in him. And that's why I think, you know, the performance was so great, is that you could see the differences. They didn't all get in there and act like a wrestler, right? They were so different. And we haven't even talked about the superstition of this family. And I like how there is this lingering thing in the background, but they don't make that hokey either, right?
No. And when they talk about the Von Erich curse, you know, his girlfriend and later wife is like, no, that's not a real thing. We're not even going to worry about it. But it is menacing, and it is in the background and not hokey at all.
And
especially as things play out.
I was going to say, as the story progresses, as their lives are progressing, it would be hard to be living through that, and after tragedy to be like, no, this is real. I mean, to the point where he moves away from his family because he doesn't want to hurt his child, his son.
Yeah.
I mean, he's sleeping at the gym. He's like living away from his family so that his son doesn't get infected by this. And like I said,
and I thought that because he gives his son their actual last name, because they changed the name, the last name. But I didn't know until I looked this up that Michael's legal name is that same last name. He is not, he doesn't have the Von name on his birth certificate.
So I think most of them probably had that, because he mentions, you know, that when Kevin changes it on the birth certificate, he mentions that's my actual given name is Atkinson, I think is the last name.
Yeah, except for he didn't ever go by it, where Michael at one point like used it publicly.
Yeah.
So I just thought that was kind of interesting, because it doesn't say under any of their other bios, it doesn't say the Atkinson except for on Michael's.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you mentioned, Val, earlier, like why the dad kept passing him up, and you hit on it right there. In professional wrestling, you've got to have a gimmick that sells, that draws heat, that people are going to pay to go see. And while he had the look, because he looked awesome, he just never had the mic skills, and still doesn't, by the way. He was on AEW a couple days ago because they were trying to promote this movie coming out. Still does not have any mic skills at all. that apparently never got better. But that's done in a lot of wrestlers as they get in the big time. They have the look, they've got the in-ring skills, but the minute they get on the microphone,
Ultimate Warrior.
Apart. Oh my heck. Yes.
Ultimate Warrior had no mic skills, but he had the look, and he had the physique, and he was kind of like the Goldberg of the era.
Yeah.
You know, where he had the look and the feel, but
he'd get on the microphone and he'd say stuff, and you're like, I have, like, it's not even a sentence. It's not a coherent string of thought. It's just he just kept talking, and you're like, what
is he the Kanye West of wrestling?
Yeah, it's probably pretty close. Yeah, that's a good description of
But then you've got somebody like Hulk Hogan who had the look, but then had all the mic skills.
Well, and that's why Hulk Hogan was such a big deal, because he looked huge, he looked awesome, but then he could get on the microphone and talk. Same thing with Macho Man Randy Savage. He had the build and the look, but he could also talk on the microphone. And that's why Vince McMahon went with Hogan as he was starting to build his territory. So Vince McMahon, he's the owner of WWE, and he inherited the WWF, which was a territory in the northeastern United States, and he decided, I'm just going to take over the whole country. I'm just going to build a promotion that goes coast to coast, and that's what eventually became the WWF and then the WWE. And so we see Kerry, that, you know, we're kind of getting into this age because Kerry in this movie ends up in the WWF. I'm not going to get in trouble for saying it. They get in trouble for saying it on their broadcast, but I can say it because I'm not them. So he gets into the WWF and actually wins the Intercontinental Championship, which is the second highest title. And like that's making it at that point, because if you can you're on pay-per-views, you're on weekly television, all of that kind of stuff. And that's where you want to end up. And it still is. I mean, if you're going into indie wrestling, that's the dream. You want to be on TV on WWE. But Vince McMahon went to Hogan because he had the mic skills. He was the total package of the look and he really built that company off of Hulk Hogan.
Yeah.
So,
well, and one of the things I really loved about this film, which I also think was super smart because it did take the hokey out of what a general audience would think about the wrestling, and that was the coloring and the cinematography. The coloring of this film really was grounded, and it's these neutral colors until you're outside, and then it's kind of this overexposed light, and it made you comfortable but uncomfortable at the same time. But then the camera angles in the fighting, as they were like these, because it is very hard to shoot wrestling, to shoot boxing, like all of those, because you have to be you can't do a wide shot like you can in a football game or whatever. Like you have to be tight to have these things make sense and to have them really have that impact. And it was really cool, and it was tight. It was moving around, but it wasn't jolty.
Right. And one of my things that I loved about this is they set the camera up and let the scene happen. There wasn't, and in a lot of sports movies especially, you get a lot of really fast edits. You got a lot of really fast cuts. And in this one, they would just let the scene happen, even in the wrestling moments. But the shot that I loved, and it's one of my favorite shots of the year, is after his brother gets in the motorcycle accident and Kerry goes into the ring by himself, and he's basically like trying to just deal with all of this trauma and all of these issues.
Kevin.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah. And he starts the camera, the focus is very narrow and it's just on the top rope. And so his back's in focus by the back rope, and he runs away from the camera to the other side of the ring and then comes back. He hits the rope, and the rope starts going in and out of focus because that depth of field is so shallow. And then the lens is slowly being pulled to go even more out of focus as he's running, because he's losing everything. And this is all he's trying to focus on, and he can't even concentrate on that.
That's a cute face, Tracy. It's a cute freeze frame, though. Like I kind of want to screenshot that.
I love that scene too, and probably for a very different reason than Tracy, because I'm not the cinematography nerd that he is, which I love that he is. But I loved it because that's a thing that's an exercise, a common one, running the ropes that they do to kind of stay in shape and kind of run that routine and everything else. So the fact that that's what he did, to kind of get that stress and everything that he was dealing with, it was cool because they run the ropes all the time as professional wrestlers. So
I do have to say that I I really love that shot. And I think it was one of the only shots in the movie that I think deserved to have that kind of blurry focus, because there were, the one complaint that I have about that movie is that there were a lot of out of focus shots, and there were a couple that made sense, and some of them were a little misplaced for me. But that shot was,
yeah. And we get the entire full length version of Tom Sawyer, which was really cool.
I knew you were going to be, as soon as it came on, I was like,
because sometimes they like put it in the trailer, and you're like, and Jake, please, give more of the background on this for those that don't know, but like they have the song in the trailer, Rush, Tom Sawyer by Rush, and it's like, okay, that's cool, but then sometimes it's not there. And then when they start to play it in the movie, I'm thinking, oh, you're going to get like a 15-20 second sample. They did like the whole song. So Jake, give the background on that.
Well, yeah. So Carrie did go by that moniker, the Modern Day Warrior, and it did come from the Tom Sawyer song by Rush. And it's interesting because later in his career, he tagged with Jim Hellwig, who is the Ultimate Warrior. And so I wonder, where he was the Modern Day Warrior, Jim Hellwig at one point was the Dingo Warrior. Oh, no.
The Dingo Warrior?
What?
The Dingo Warrior. Yeah.
Wow.
Dingo ate my baby.
Yeah, exactly. He'll eat your baby. And then eventually became Ultimate Warrior. So I don't know if there was a tie in there, but they did tag together at some point. But yeah, that was his moniker, Modern Day Warrior, before he came to the WWF, where they changed it to the Texas Tornado because they had the worst names at that time.
Dingo Warrior. Maybe
Dingo Warrior. Yep.
I know Tracy's Fluffy Cakes. Maybe I needed to be Dingo Warrior.
Yeah, Fluffy Cakes, I don't know if that would work so well as like a wrestling name. Like
I don't think you should. I don't think you should assume.
Dude, that's a baby face right there.
Yeah, well, it would have to be a baby face. Yeah. Baby face. Those are the good guys in wrestling. Heels are the bad guys.
Yeah, I could be a baby face. I could totally. Yeah, I'd have a hard time pulling off the heel.
No, you would.
I'd have a hard time.
But there are a lot of heels that, in their personal life were very much like you, Tracy, very kind and gracious.
I was bust up laughing and stuff. I couldn't keep it.
One of the biggest heels that I remember from the early 90s was Earthquake.
Oh, yeah.
And he had a reputation behind the scenes of being just one of the nicest guys.
Oh, okay.
And everybody loved him. But
oh, man,
in the ring, he was menacing and
that whole era, there were some great names. There was Tsunami.
Yeah, Tsunami. Before Tsunami, he was Tugboat.
Tugboat, yes. Yeah. Yes. I remember that.
That's not a good idea at all.
He was a big dude.
And after he was Tsunami and he went over to WCW, he was the Shockmaster. And if you want to see one of the most famous wrestling clips ever, go to YouTube and search the Shockmaster WCW, and
I would definitely put WCW after you put that.
Don't just Google search Shockmaster. That
okay? Yeah, that's fine. But I'm telling you need to go look this up.
Look at Fern, how she just sits like a lady. She just sits like a lady.
Yes, she does. She's very proper.
My dog's more of a lady than I am.
Well, should we give grades on this one?
Yeah.
Val, you want to start?
You want me to start?
Yeah.
Sure.
Ladies first.
Ladies first. So Fern needs to go, and then.
Oh, Fern, what do you think of? She's tired of me watching movies. She's over it.
She's like over movies.
She is so over it. I was kind of in a conundrum on if I wanted to give this a B+ or an A-, because it is, to me, it is one of my top 10 movies of the year. And I would definitely watch this movie over and over again. I mean, not like back to back or anything.
Right. But if it's on,
yeah. I mean, I would go back specifically probably at least one more time to pick it and watch it, and then maybe next year or the year after. But I would definitely suggest it. But I went with a B+ because there were like a few of the out of focus moments. And because I know it's going up against another movie, a couple other movies that are A's, and it's not quite there for me, but a B+ is still a high grade. This is such a good movie. Like, you've got to see it. And I would definitely recommend seeing it in the theater first. I mean, I still think it'll play well, on your big screen at home. But if you can get to the theater, this is one of those that you wouldn't regret paying that money.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I agree. And I think releasing this where they have, because December is typically the, either the big budget Christmas type movies that come out, or kind of the award ceremony serious kind of, and I feel like this belongs in that category. I would give it an A-. While we were there, Babe asked why an A-. I couldn't give him a good answer then, but as I thought about it, Ric Flair is why it's an A- and not an A. I can't.
Yeah,
I'm sorry, I can't forgive it.
Like, that was the another reason.
Even the strut, like, he's got
the strut was,
and it wasn't right.
What was so hard about it is Harvey Race, they got so spot on when they showed him and the actor that played him. Like, I thought it was legitimately the guy, right? I thought it was Harvey. I thought they found old footage of him and they were putting it into the movie. And so to be so off with Ric Flair was just disappointing. But no, I think knowing the history behind the story and everything, I think they do a good job of depicting it. They leave out some key things though. And I think they inflate Kevin's role a little bit. But overall, I think the story it tells is well done.
I mean, I feel like they have to, you know what I mean? Like, they have to do something for that. And I think I want to change my grade to the A-. I've been so like on the fence about it, but I think an A- is better. So I'm changing. I'm flip-flopping into the A- category.
And I'm the same way. I'm right on the A- B+ range. I kind of maybe just a hair more on the B+, but it's right there. The acting was phenomenal. That scene where they're having breakfast and the dad is like, everybody knows that he's the favorite, he's second, he's third.
That was so good.
Things can change. It's like that, and it's like that sets up the whole relationship right there.
Yeah.
I feel like that's something most dads would say, kind of joking to like tease their kids,
but
like
he was
dead serious.
He was dead serious. Yeah. And
I don't think he made one joke the entire movie.
No.
And it would have felt weird if he did. Like, at the very end, he had a kill a joke. It would be like, that's just
it would have been like the record scratch moment, where he's like, I thought the acting was phenomenal. I'm not usually a Zac Efron fan. I mean, he's fine at what he does, but this was the first time where I was like, okay, you impressed me. Like, I felt like there was some real stuff going on there. There was a lot of stuff that I knew, but there was a lot of stuff I didn't know. The brother with the motorcycle accident, and I won't spoil that in case somebody hasn't seen the movie yet, but that shocked me. And Jake, you told me later, he continued to perform after the accident and didn't tell people. Like, people did not know what happened. And so that's just incredible. It's one of the few films where I would say that I wish it was a little longer. Almost always we complain that it was too long. And it's like, I kind of wish that they would have worked in the younger brother story. And I get why they cut it. I get why they took it out. They felt like it was going to be too much tragedy, too much story. But I just kind of feel like they could have just put a little bit more in there. If it was another 10 or 15 minutes, even 5 minutes with that brother, you could explain he's got brittle bone disease. And then,
but even the way that he went out, it would have pushed in the end like a little bit more.
Exactly. And I think the ending would have hit a little bit harder. And
I mean, it hit pretty hard, but
it did. But I like the fact, Val, you talked about how grounded it was. And then at the very end, you get kind of this very fantasy-esque moment, but it worked.
Yeah.
It did not take me out of it at all. I thought that was well-deserved.
Well, and I think one of the most powerful scenes of the movie is that quiet one at the end when all the boys are out of the house because she's had this full house and the mom is in there, painting, and the father walks in, he's like, what are we having for dinner? And she's like, well, I'm not hungry. And he just picks up a chair and sits down at the table, and that's that, it was, again, 2023 was the year of these quiet, well-made movies. And when we talk about kind of like our year in review in a couple of weeks, most of the movies that I'm picking are not these big blockbuster movies, but these just quiet, well-made movies. And unfortunately, if you go to like Variety, or to see any of like the predictions for the nominees for all of the award shows, the Iron Claw is only on there a few times, and none of it is for acting or best picture or best director, which to me is, but I get it. There's a lot of competition. There's a lot of big movies that were made for award shows. But I have a lot of unpopular opinions too. We'll get into that when we do our award show episode. But I do think this is going to be one of those that it may get lost in the shuffle for a little bit. Kind of like Air at the beginning of the year. There's another one, You Hurt My Feelings, which is another A24 movie. And I just think because there are these kind of epic movies that came out this year that stick out like a sore thumb, I think that this movie may get lost a little bit. But I hope not. I hope that it gets up there. I hope people go out Christmas Day and do their tradition and go pick this movie.
If you want a smart, well-made, interesting film with real meat on the bone, this is one to go check out.
And it will surprise you, which doesn't happen very often.
It's not, you don't have to be a wrestling fan. You don't have to.
Not at all.
I mean, go and see Wonka with the family and have the family.
Wonka's already out, so
No, but that's what I'm saying. I mean, if you haven't seen it, do the family thing. But I mean, because this is obviously not one you want to take.
Don't take your kids to this one
unless your kids are 18.
Yeah, but
again, I feel bad. I'm not telling you what to do with your kids, but it's just not. It's not as family friendly as Wonka would be.
Yeah, but this is.
I think under 16 would be a mistake.
Yeah, it's in my top 10, and I would say definitely don't sleep on this one. Go check this one out.
Yeah.
Well, there you go. Iron Claw comes out this weekend. We are going to post this episode on Friday, which normally we do it on Monday, but we wanted to get this out while it's out there because I hope it does find its audience. And if we can play some small role in helping someone find that film, then I want to do that. So check it out if you haven't. Otherwise, we will be back with our year in review for 2023. We're hoping to get that out the first Monday in January, which is conveniently January 1st. Yes, coming right up. And then we've got stuff going on all throughout January, including our run in Disneyland. And you guys posted on that. But thank you so much for your support, and we appreciate it very much.
Happy holidays, everybody.
Yeah, happy holidays.
And we won't see you enjoy the time and enjoy your families.
Yep, absolutely.
Are you going to sing Rush for us, Tracy?
I can't hit the Geddy Lee notes.
It's okay.
I will say, though, the middle drum solo section is one of the most famous drum solos.
I'm sorry I said anything.
Of all time.
Yeah, you got him started. This is on you.
This has been an Age of Geek media production.